Hello, and welcome to another video. This one is going to be a little bit longer. I want to talk about the recent live stream that happened for 7.7. Overall, there wasn't really anything in regards to PvP. The main interesting thing that we saw was mainly the fact that they're going to rework a few classes. Or not really rework them, they're going to rework the leveling experience. It's going to be focused on the leveling experience, but it is probably going to change the baseline abilities if we're lucky. On top of that, it does seem that they are looking at potentially reordering abilities, but also at the same time passes, including maybe talents. There are a lot of dead talents, and they are also updating the default choices, including the default specs that you will automatically be put onto. So for those players that aren't too privy with the game, they will have a better chance, which is a great ideal. Honestly, I do feel like they should go through and get rid of a lot of the dead talent choices. I'd be happy to give more feedback. This is the main reason why that I'm making this video. I've already given feedback on some of the ones that they're actually already going to tackle, which is interesting. I also want to probably give feedback on the PTS, which I will try to do. Obviously, it's not like a huge, tremendous undertaking. They're not really doing anything too crazy. It is very nice that they're only doing a few classes, and most of these classes don't need too much. There is one that does need a lot, but for the most part, the rest of them don't. And I've already talked about this one class in particular. But with that out of the way, I'm going to show you obviously the highlight and what specs we're talking about. I believe it was Vengeance and Carnage. However, I'm going to put it on screen. I'm not the best editor, and I'm going to pretty much try to do this in one take. So anything that I missed, I will be adding on screen. Other than that, getting into my feedback for the game, which I will probably also add into the background as we go through pretty much what I want to talk about in this video. Again, not much that happened in the live stream. No answer or response about ranked PvP. I do think, if anything, if they were to add ranked PvP, they would have to completely rework it from the ground up, which I do have a ranked video, by the way. Highly recommend checking that out if you are interested in ranked. There are options and ways for them to implement ranked once again into this game without them having to do too much on their end and or as moderate. However, it would be more so enforced on skilled based matchmaking. And what I mean by that is that you almost likely will not get Q-pops unless other people around your skill level are also online. So meaning once you've gained a certain amount of elo, you would pretty much never get a pop unless you allowed yourself to be matched with lower rated players. Therefore, you can pretty much guarantee that all your matches will be pretty good. However, obviously there's going to be some outliers because, once again, Swtor's PvP population isn't as big as it should be or as could be. But I do think ranked would be a good step forward, and what I offered in that video would basically solve a lot of the solutions or a lot of the problems with a lot of solutions to pretty much every single case of manipulation and or abuse. Other than that, let's go ahead and get into the main things that I want to talk about here. Starting with quality of life, I would definitely say when it comes to things that they should probably be focusing on, things that make the game play better. More enjoyment, more fun. As Eric Musko said, fun is the main reason you should be doing content. I also agree with that. That is something that I've said in the past, and if you're not having fun, I don't feel like you should be participating in that content. Maybe it's just not for you. Now, getting into the first quality of life suggestion, I would say gearing as a topic. Implant set bonuses should be basically changed to where you can exchange them and or trade them in for different stat variants. So for example, I have second wind. I want it to be critical. Letting me be able to swap to critical accuracy doesn't really change the game that much, but it does make gearing a little bit more simple for me, because then I can use all my implants to be the same stat, so therefore I know that my gear will be static no matter what I end up swapping, because my implants will always be the same, so the only variations I'll ever have to do will be with my gear. And then let's say a certain spec has a different stat pool. I can then change those implants to avoid having to shift around my gear as much. This is a simple basic thing that probably should have been added a long time ago, and when it comes to maybe putting restrictions on it, maybe don't let take implants become damage implants, for example. So for like changing it into crit, maybe just allow it to swap between tank stats like defense chance. Then also just another one just for myself. I know a lot of other people probably potentially also want to see this, but this is mainly just for myself here. The Tormented set being updated correctly to resemble Kell Dragon Weapon Master like it was originally intended. Out of all the classes in 6.0, pretty much everybody got their Kell Dragon reskin. The only class that did not see it was Warrior. Even Guardian saw it, or I guess Jedi Knight. I'm not really sure why Warrior was singled out, but it definitely felt personal for me. I know I'm definitely looking too into that, but that's been a set that I've been wanting for a really long time, and I regret not getting it a long time ago. Meanwhile, the rest of the classes do have access to theirs, and I'll show that on screen for you guys so you know what that looks like. I think with a black dye, it can look very good. I really enjoy this chest piece in general. You'll see me using it a lot, but I also like the cyan tubes. Absolutely amazing. And there's a lot of other sets that take advantage of this, and you probably already have seen them because there are reskins available still to this day. Now getting into a basic quality life change, adding class buffs. Something so simple. I don't understand why it was pruned. It was definitely pruned just to prune things. There was no reason for it. This makes the new player experience and just in general leveling experience that much worse, because 10% critical definitely matters a lot, but so does all the other buffs. The other buffs are actually incredibly powerful. Maybe only the bounty hunter one isn't as good, but regardless, missing your class buffs is terrible, and if somebody has access to those buffs, they should be able to share them. Sometimes with group bugs, you're not able to share buffs, but also at the same time, you will lose some buffs, and that's not good. There's a bug, and it's unintended. There is one workaround where you can get a guild and you can get Omni Magnification. However, that's like billions of credits and a guild. And if you already join a guild that has it, that's great, but chances are they're probably not going to allocate that spot for Omni Magnification. Then getting into loot. Bad luck prevention or protection on heroic crates, or exchange the crates for certain pieces. This would be a great change because this would allow you to exchange your crates for a piece that you've basically been hunting for, or maybe you only want one piece of the set, or you're just missing one piece of the set. It's very important, and there's a lot of cosmetic grind that you could have in this game, and a lot of good cosmetics that are in the game locked behind this content. Uprisings could even potentially give these crates as a reward. Just in general, you know, it's a pain to grind these, and it would be nice if it was made better. And then also allowing Warzone 1s, which is the Warzone currency, to be earned at all levels, including random loot caches. Cache? Maybe? I don't know. I feel like I'm butchering words now that I'm, trying to do this in one take. Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely butchering things here. Anyway, I think that would be a great step forward to help players that are leveling, and they're trying to do some war zones to get some accommodations to allow them to get their first bit of gear a little bit easier. I do think the PvP introduction at max level for each season should probably be changed to give you a full set of the lowest level PvP gear at the time. I think that would be a great step forward to allow players to be a little bit more competitive. And I also think the same thing should probably happen for PvE as well. Maybe tie it to Conquest, give it a free set of Conquest gear whenever you complete your first Conquest per season, like Galactic season. Just in case you don't already have it. Obviously people will just deconstruct it for accommodations if they already do. Now let's get into the main thing that I want to talk about here is PvP. Going into fixes for PvP, rework medals, so awarding more input into the match and forcing a certain amount of medals to be considered taking part. However, set low amount of medals to avoid false positives, and what I mean by this is to flag players that aren't contributing to avoid unsportsmanlike conduct. So, like, let's say somebody's AFK'd on Shadow or some other class that is stealth and doesn't contribute to the match. They should be locked out of queuing again for a short time. Not a very long time, maybe like 5 minutes, to avoid them from matching with the same people once again and doing the same thing. And then players not taking part will receive a penalty after the match is over, obviously not allowing them to queue for a very short time, as I said. This penalty is increased for arenas where games go to acid with little to no interaction happening. So people that are intentionally stalling people out and wasting everybody's time by sitting into stealth for pretty much the entire match. It's very easy to tell when somebody's doing this because their damage, healing, and damage taken will be very low. Obviously, if people are actually trying and they're fighting, I feel like those should not count. So for example, if they have a decent amount of damage, decent amount of healing, decent amount of damage taken, and they're just constantly getting resets and fighting again, I don't feel like that's not really a problem. That's more of a issue where they're not able to take care of him in a timely fashion. And I think that is a different kind of lesson to be taught. And then also rework weeklies and conquest objectives to better promote sportsmanlike play, which means X amount of medals are required to complete both conquest objectives, but also weeklies. This would change a lot in PvP instantly, as people would be more worried about the personal performance rather than their team's performance, and winning or losing doesn't matter as much as it used to. So people can actually focus on the main source of content, that is PvP. And then make matches not start until everyone has hit accept. Basically what this means is that we don't start matches where people have hit decline. This means you don't run into an issue where the matchmaker has seen, let's say, 1 tank kill pre-made with 2 DPS. They want to play, they hit accept. There's another group just like that, and they decide to hit no. Right now, the game will actually start that match and just find backfills for the opposing team, making that match incredibly unbalanced, and most likely those players that backfilled are going to just be DPS players. Or the alternative situation where, you know, there's a tank and a healer found their pugs, and they just happen to be in queue, and they're like, I want to finish this quest, and they miss the pop or just don't want to take the pop. You know, there's innocent reasons for people to not take the pop, and it causes unbalanced matches. Fixing this would allow the queue to basically have a lot less rage quits and a lot less backfills. And it would also just make things more balanced. Let me move my character just real quick. I'm sorry. As you see, people are on Korban, you know, taking their little speeder behind me. I am a little bit off of the side of the mountain here. and then make bolster work at least slightly. It's not really bolster in this addition that I'm trying to explain. Basically make it so if you're missing augment slots in max level PvP, you're basically giving 286 item level augment worth of stats per missing augment slot. So for example, you're missing all 14 augments, you get extra stats equal to 286 purple augments for the mastery variant or the critical variant, for example, allowing you to be on a more competitive field with your peers, because without augments you are severely outmatched. This is one of the main issues when it comes to gearing in PvP right now, and it would be a great fix. Now, my personal opinions with this, we're going to talk about map reworks, and this is something that I've talked about in a previous video. This is also something that I find that will be relatively opinionated, so some people will not agree with me, and that's totally okay. This is just personal feedback and what I envision the game to be. Starting off with Voidstar, I feel like it should have another variant. I think Voidstar is a great map, however, sometimes it's not as fun to be on the defender side. I think it would be great to see the old version of Voidstar where there is no gate down the middle, have a variant of whether each one will show up, giving Voidstar a little bit more weight and actually popping. That would be nice, because Voidstar is actually an enjoyable map, and I feel like if people saw the Voidstar, the original Voidstar once again, they might like the new Voidstar that we have a little bit more. But also, you know, some people will like both of them. I think it would be cool to see that version again, but also at the same time, it would definitely mix things up, because Voidstar can get stale, but also at the same time, oftentimes it ends up just being a speedrun, and a lot of people just don't care about the objective. So if the fence is not there, it's much easier to play the objective. And with the other changes that I'm going to suggest for the other maps, it's going to further teach players player allocation and other important things that will make it a lot easier for Voidstar to be played correctly. Now going into Ancient Hypergate. So the first node spawn, make it automatically capped, and orbs now give a healing and damage buff when obtained, but it also increases your damage taken. This means everybody wants to get mid control. You don't really have to worry about your node. Obviously it can be back capped. Even potentially giving the idea of like whoever last capped the node, it'll auto recap on the second round. That'd be a cool ideal. However, I know a lot of people may not be interested in that. Obviously, this is opinions, but I do feel like that would be a great way to enforce the mid fight, but also give kind of interesting gameplay when it comes to capping, or not capping, but grabbing a node, or not a node, but an orb. Obviously, I do see issues with the orbs, of course, but at the same time, the damage increase taken would be quite interesting. And at the same time, I do feel like things like Gunslinger or Sniper, obviously popping a trench and just grabbing it, is a problem. Maybe, you know, we just let that happen, you know, keep it interesting, give a reason for players to do that. Or even more reason to try to control it and make sure that they can't do that. Anyway, obviously the negative effect should help balance that out a little bit. Then moving into Quesh Hut Ball. Movement speed penalty is removed, damage is increased while carrying the ball, and so is damage taken. End zones are no longer gap closer protected, explode timer is increased, and you are unable to gap close while holding the ball. This would allow for players to basically jump into the end zone and make it easier for passing, giving more incentives for passing and making passing a lot more normal and fluid, like it used to be back in the old days. On top of that, for Quesh Hut Ball, it's pretty much mandatory that you'll need to pass, so making this a little bit more chaotic in general would just be better. Removing the movement speed penalty will be great. Obviously, I think the original penalty was just fine, so I would say go back to that. And then the obviously damage increase and damage taken would help incentivize players to pick it up that can survive it, and then obviously throw it to somebody else, so therefore they can take advantage of the damage increase while they have their offensive cooldowns and probably defensive cooldowns. However, it is a ballsy way to play because you basically are making yourself a target and vice versa. And then obviously, it pretty much incentivizes everybody to hit the ball carrier at all times because they'll be doing more damage to them. And then when it comes to the bit, pretty much the same changes as Question Ball, mostly just because it is very similar. However, obviously the gap closing thing, not working with a ball, is a little bit more important on this map because there is not multiple floors. Civil War, once you obtain your node and the middle node, you unlock access to the original speeders. Losing mid removes those speeders. This allows you to basically defend your side node a lot easier. This would be very interesting. It would add a little bit more spice to the match, but also incentivize mid control over everything. Currently, Civil War is played like a runathon or a marathon. It's not very fun, and it is counteractive towards having fun. It also doesn't really focus on the game either because you often end up just getting ganked and you don't really learn anything from that. And then for Yavin Ruins, you pretty much do the same thing, but I think the mods underground should give obviously faster node cap as they already do, and a small absorb shield that must be broken before damage or CC can go into effect, but you can still interrupt them with the actual interruptibility. This means people will have to make sure that they actually use their interrupts correctly and give them incentive to actually use their interrupt at all. Otherwise, they will pretty much fall behind and not really get anywhere. This also helps promote the importance of player allocation and how they should basically do that. Obviously, overcommitting or just not committing correctly is going to cause a lot of issues. The same thing for Civil War. This is probably the first two steps that you'll see where player allocation is incredibly important. And then no varicose. Make the mid control point value increased to rival the side nodes. So for example, if you have mid node, make it almost equal or just slightly off of being equal. So mid becomes the most important node. And with how close it is to spawn, it really teaches and I'm just butchering everything. It really teaches players the importance of player allocation. So for example, if you end up overcommitting to the side node, chances are people are going to respond to mid way faster than you running there and running back. This also gives more incentives for duelists to actually take advantage of their ability to duel and potentially win the off node. Now going into Van and Hutball, pretty much the same changes. However, Poison Trap should be replaced with instant damage because it is quite overpowered. And then change the stun trap cycles to 3 to 4 seconds at max. Currently, I think it goes all the way up to like 5 or 6. That's just slightly too long, I would say. And it really just isn't fun. The traps are the worst part of Vanden outside of the performance. Then going into accessibility, ability to change the health bar color and other small UI elements to help the colorblind players. For example, I am colorblind, or I guess Protan colorblind, not fully colorblind. I can see most colors. Things just look a little bit different for me when it comes to shades of colors. A lot of the shades will mix together for me and I can't tell the difference. That does mean that I have a hard time when certain colors are showing up on screen because they blend together. If I was able to change my health bar, I think the visual clarity would improve for me. However, I know I can put a colorblind filter on my monitor or as through NVIDIA and whatnot, or even through in-game, but there's no slider for the intensity. Unfortunately, I don't need an extreme colorblind filter, but also at the same time, I don't need, well, fortunately enough, I don't really want to do the NVIDIA thing either because I don't want my gameplay footage to be kind of ruined in a way. So that would be just a nice quality of life accessibility change. Then when it comes to UI, more options to minimize the UI. Buffs and debuff filters for self and targets would be a huge step forward. It would allow for a lot less clutter on screen, but also probably increase performance as a lot of things wouldn't need to be loaded all at once. And then having a cooldown tracker that shows abilities when abilities are off cooldown and usable. So for example, let's say I had like Vengeful Slam on my left or right of me, and I had my UI off just like this, but if I had the bar enabled, you could see it, and if I use that button, Vengeful Slam would disappear. There'd be nothing there, and it wouldn't show back up until I have that ability back. And then I can customize it as a new bar, set the abilities on there, and have more customization options of how many I want there, what I want there, and so on and so forth. I think that would be a great way to reduce the UI elements and make a more minimalist UI. Then also add a personal resource bar to the personal display. Basically what's above my head. As you can see, I have the regular health bar right here, and then the resolve bar right here. In between this, we can have the resource bar. I don't think it's necessary to see the allies or enemies resource bar. I just think it would be very nice for you to be able to see your own resource bar, because that allows you to turn off more UI elements, therefore going even further with the minimalist UI. Now going into performance and graphics, obviously animation quality options should just be something that needs to be worked on. Combined with buff and debuff pruning and or the ability to filter those out, this could significantly, there we go, reduce the CPU load on both players' CPUs, but also the server. This is probably one of the biggest culprits for 16-man content and the frame rate issues that you see when pools are about to start, or they start, because players are hitting anywhere from, let's say, an 8-man up to like 600 to 700 buttons in that first minute. And there's a lot of buffs and debuffs, and the amount of buffs and debuffs that are probably happening are probably upwards to 1,000. Now, when it goes to 16-man, you pretty much have double that happening, and that's a lot to load, like a lot. And then obviously an option to tone down the flashy cosmetics, for example, like trails and fierce sabers, or other things like that, like reflective armor. Having the option to just turn that down or tune that down so it doesn't work in PvP. It would allow us to not have to worry about that in the future, as I do see cosmetics probably getting out of hand. Other than that, last thing I want to talk about here is obviously privacy options. I do think there should be an option to hide your legacy, but also at the same time hide your achievements, and just in general having a privacy mode available for when you log in. So for example, it doesn't tell people that you logged in. You obviously still show up in the guild panel. Your stronghold doesn't tell you that you're online, and so on and so forth. Basically make it easier for you to play more privately or incognito without having the usual suspects, like, you know, say, hey, maybe you don't want to socialize. That's kind of normal for most people, and a lot of games do have these privacy options that will help you not be bothered if you don't want to be bothered. Unfortunately, this game has a lot of features now that allow you to basically stalk each other, and I don't think that's healthy for the game. It's almost like privacy is a complete afterthought. I think that's a terrible ideal. Anything really to improve that, I think would be great. But also, I do still think legacy ignore and functionality should still work. That's definitely a tricky topic, and for me, I don't really care too much, but it is definitely something I wanted to bring up. But other than that, that's pretty much my feedback for future outside of obviously bring ranked back. I want to see ranked. We've already talked about it once here. I'm going to talk about it again. Ranked, like, come on. The main content that we have left in this game is PvP. If you want to promote PvP, obviously work on it, fix it, and on top of that, ask the community for help. I'm happy to give feedback, so are other people. When you guys do the PTS and do changes to the classes that you listed, I will be happy to give feedback, and so will other people. Please listen. On top of that, you know, ranked. Please. Give us a reason to sub to the game. Give us a reason to take the game, I guess, slightly more serious than what it already is. And outside of that, you know, it's just something a little bit more fun for players to do. I would say solo ranked 8v8 would be sick, even if it only lasted for a month at a time. Let's say June or something like that every year. There could be so many things that you could do, except I feel like we're just waiting, sitting in silence. It's kind of been the theme of Swtor since, I want to say, like 2.0, or maybe even before that. Regardless, you know, this is more of a cathartic thing for me, and also at the same time, you know, hey, I've got my feedback out. I can't say I didn't try. I feel like I at least owe it to you guys to bother. Other than that, I appreciate you guys for watching. I know I've completely butchered a lot of words, but I haven't really talked in a little bit and done a longer commentary. But yeah. Other than that, expect a new video soon. I'm going to start tackling the, I guess, guides again, but I'm going to do them in more depth if I can. I'm going to try to also potentially get 344 PvP or PvE gear so I can then parse and then also help you guys that are in PvE. Other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I appreciate you guys for sticking around and watching, and other than that, later.